Hello and welcome to World News here on TVP World. It's 12 o'clock in Warsaw. I'm Diana Skaya. We begin with high-stakes ceasefire talks between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Now, in a phone call with the U.S. President, Vladimir Putin committed to scaling back Russian attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure. However, the Russian leader did not agree to a broader 30-day ceasefire sought by Washington. Now, during Tuesday's talks, Putin imposed several conditions for a lasting ceasefire, including the suspension of arms and intelligence support for Ukraine. Both leaders acknowledged that the first step towards peace should be ending strikes on energy and civilian infrastructure. Additionally, Trump and Putin agreed that Ukraine and Russia would each exchange 175 prisoners. According to Trump, Moscow also pledged to return more than 23 seriously wounded Ukrainian soldiers. Moving forward, their administrations will negotiate a maritime ceasefire in the Black Sea, followed by a full ceasefire, and ultimately a lasting peace. One key issue, however, was notably absent from the discussion: the future of U.S. aid to Ukraine. In an interview given immediately following his talks with Putin, Trump confirmed that the topic was never raised. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff has said that further diplomatic talks between the U.S. and Russia will be held on March 23rd in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and they will be led by National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. During his visit to Finland, Ukrainian President Zelenskyy said he will speak with Donald Trump later on Wednesday. According to the Ukrainian official, he will learn the details of Trump's conversation with Putin and discuss the next steps towards a peace agreement with Russia.
Today I will speak with President Trump to discuss the details of the next steps. We had a very good meeting between our teams in Jeddah. I think everything went well, if only it weren't for Russia, which is never happy when anything goes well. So we will discuss the details of the next steps.
Now, amid ongoing ceasefire talks, the Russian army launched a massive strike on civilian infrastructure in several regions of Ukraine overnight. Our Kyiv correspondent Oskar Katerji reports.
Well, while Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin were discussing a temporary ceasefire, it was another busy night here in Ukraine for Ukrainian air defenders as 145 drones were launched by Russia into Ukrainian territory, targeting again energy infrastructure and 2 hospitals in Sumy, which thankfully had no injuries but did result in the evacuation of patients. Senior advisor to the president's office, Andrei Yermak, said Russia is attacking our civilian infrastructure and people right now. President Zelenskyy, who is currently on a state visit to Finland, also had this to say in response to that negotiation between Putin and Trump.
If President Trump can put more pressure on Vladimir Putin in terms of details and force him to stop striking the energy infrastructure and the sea, if this is the first step and there are no other steps, then he should share the details on how we are going to do it. I am sure that Ukrainian and American sides will support any step that will lead to decreasing the number of strikes on both military and civilian infrastructure. We support all steps aimed at the end of the war. We will support them. But in order to support them, we need to understand what exactly we support. When President Trump has time, he is a busy man. When he has time, he can call me anytime. He has my phone number. We are ready to talk through further steps with pleasure. We are skeptical when it comes to trusting the Russians. There is no trust in Putin. That's why I am saying we need to understand how it will work in practice, so that it will not depend on their desire only. That's it.
So while the Russians continued to bombard Ukraine, the Ukrainians responded in kind with another attack on an oil depot in Krasnodar launched by Ukrainian drones. President Zelenskyy also released a statement following the Russian attacks on Ukrainian territory, saying today Putin actually rejected the proposal for a complete ceasefire. It would be right for the world to reject any attempts by Putin to drag out the war in response. Zelenskyy clearly there placing the blame on Putin for these attacks and for stalling for time and trying to convince the US president that he's interested in peace. Well, the view from Kiev is that he is certainly not interested in peace or even a ceasefire. Now, we also have some initial reactions from Ukrainians to that news. Let's take a listen to what they had to say.
I think this will be a step toward a ceasefire if Russia really stops attacking Ukrainian energy infrastructure. But to be honest, I hardly believe it will be long-lasting.
Talking about peace with those people will lead to nothing in the future. So the answer to the question whether it will help, my answer is no. We've seen already ceasefires for 30, 60 and 90 days in the past, starting from 2014, and unfortunately they did not bring any good. I'm from the occupied territories and I've seen myself what the Russians were doing to civilians and our infrastructure. There was no respect for us there. There was no peace, there is no peace, and there will be no peace.
So from the Ukrainian government perspective and from the people here in Ukraine, Trump certainly has a lot more work to do if he's going to get this temporary ceasefire enacted here in Ukraine. It's Oz Kataji reporting from Kyiv for TVP World.
Berlin will provide Ukraine with an additional 3 billion euros in military aid, Reuters reports, citing a draft document from Germany's Ministry of Finance. Now, Jörg Kukies, the finance minister, has notified the parliament's budget committee of this decision. Now, the move is considered groundbreaking as outgoing Chancellor Olaf Scholz had previously opposed providing additional aid. On Tuesday, the Bundestag amended the constitution, allowing future governments to increase the budget deficit without limits in order to finance defense spending, the modernization of infrastructure, and to provide aid to Ukraine. The German parliament has adopted the amendment to constitution, paving the way for massive increases in defense and infrastructure spending. This could mark the beginning of a new era in Germany. And our correspondent, Ovidiusz Nicea, is on site and reports from Berlin.
Germany is waking up to what almost feels like a new, different reality. Germany's long-standing fiscally conservative approach is coming to an end. Yesterday, the German parliament voted in favor of amending the constitution to allow for higher spending on defense and infrastructure. They have amended the so-called debt brake, which was established back in 2009 during that year's debt crisis. It limited the amount that Germany as a state could borrow to a tiny fraction of the size of the German economy. And now there are exemptions to the debt brake, and financing for infrastructure and defense will be exempted from it. Now, many economists believe that this could give the stagnating German economy a boost, create new jobs, but also boost the German defense industry. But yesterday's vote was highly controversial, not only because Friedrich Merz, Germany's likely next chancellor, was promising to his voters that the debt brake will stay, and changed his mind following the elections. Many also believe that excessive debt is nothing good, and we saw protests yesterday in front of the German parliament. It's not just the fiscally conservative Free Democratic Party that opposes the bill, but also far left and far right voted against amending the debt brake. After yesterday's vote, I was able to speak to the leader of the Alternative for Germany, a far-right party, leader Alice Weidel, and I asked her for her reaction to that vote.
The result is a catastrophe because Germany is right now on its way to high indebtedness. So we decided, or the German Bundestag, the parliament decided on huge amount of debt. So therefore, in the sum, it could add up to 1.5, 1.8 trillion. So therefore, it is a giant indebtedness, and this will thus have consequences on our debt rating.
Now for the debt brake to be reformed, what's needed is the approval of the German Federal Council, where Germany's 16 states are represented. This vote will take place this Friday. From Berlin for TVP World, Ovidiusz Nicea.
On to Turkey. Protesters are rallying outside Istanbul's main police headquarters and chanting slogans after the city's mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's biggest political rival, was detained earlier on Wednesday morning. Now, İmamoğlu was detained on charges including corruption and aiding a terrorist group in what the main opposition party called a coup against our next president. The Istanbul mayor, who leads President Erdogan in opinion polls, was expecting to be selected as his party's presidential nominee on Sunday. On Tuesday, however, Istanbul University revoked his higher education degree, a constitutional requirement for the office. The decision might result in disqualifying him from the presidential race if the university decision is not overturned on appeal. According to İmamoğlu, the Turkish government is weaponizing the judiciary to maintain its hold on power. The next presidential elections in Turkey are scheduled for 2028.
I am saddened to say that a handful of minds trying to usurp the will of our people have used the police and the security forces of this country as a tool for this evil and have piled hundreds of police officers at my house, at the doors of 16 million people of Istanbul. We are faced with great tyranny, but I want you to know that I will not give up. I love you all very much. I entrust myself to my nation. Let my entire nation know that I will stand tall. I will continue to fight against that person and his mind that uses this entire process as an apparatus.
And that's all for this edition of World News here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned with us for more news and features.